Will the Minnesota Vikings have the band back together, or will they be missing out on two key pieces of their offense going into the next season? All that and more coming up right now with West Side Sports with your host, Izzy Phantasmo. Let's get it.
Convinced, but it really don't matter. We still let 'em in.
Yo, what is going on? It is your boy, Izzy Phantasmo, and you are locked into West Side Sports. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a great day. We are going to be getting into some juicy news, a juicy rumor that is coming out of Minnesota regarding the Vikings and two key pieces. Quarterback Kirk Cousins, who is destined to be a free agent this season, and wide receiver Justin Jefferson, who reports and rumors are coming out saying that dependent on Kirk Cousins and what happens with him, he may sign a long-term deal. We're going to talk about all that and more. But before we get into all that, I need y'all to do me a favor. Hit the like button down below. Hit the subscribe. Go ahead. Hit that comment button. Go ahead. Tell me what y'all want to talk about. Is like, who else should I be covering? What other quarterbacks should I be discussing when it comes to this free agency and all that? You know, now here's the fun part. Free agency doesn't start until March, but there is a bit of a time window. I think February 19th, there's a cutoff date where any salary caps or any extended money is going to get shoved into the salary going into next season. So I know a couple of teams are going to be wanting to talk with free agent quarterbacks and other free agent players to try and get those deals settled out so that they don't have to carry any extra money over into next year, you know, cutting into their salary space and whatnot. But with all that being said, let's dive right into this. Let's go ahead and talk about the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins. And if you don't know by now, Kirk Cousins came into the Minnesota Vikings back in 2018 after he had played a few years with Washington. He's been their most consistent quarterback ever since, playing on average at least 16 and a half, 17 games. He's been pretty much available every season that he has played. If you look at his statistics, if you look at his numbers, you could see why a guy like Kirk Cousins would be coveted by not only the Vikings, but by a plethora of teams. Let's dive right in and check out these stats real quick and give you the numbers behind Kirk Cousins and let's look into why the Vikings would want to keep a guy like him. So in 2018, like I said, he joins the Vikings. He plays 16 games. He throws for over 4,000 yards in his first season with the Vikings. 4,298 yards to be exact. He throws for 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. A 30 touchdown, 10 interception ratio, which is really good. He finishes that year with a 99.7 rating and a 59.5 QBR. Solid start to your campaign with Minnesota. Going into 2019, he only plays 15 games with the team. He finishes that year with 3,600 yards, 26 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. He finishes with his highest rating as a Minnesota Viking quarterback with a 107.4 rating, and his QBR is the second highest in his time with the Minnesota Vikings, finishing out with a 60.4 QBR. 2020, the Panini season, we'll leave it at that. He plays all 16 games. He goes over 4,000 yards again, 4,265 yards, 35 touchdowns to just 13 interceptions. He finishes that year with his second highest rating with a 105 and a 55.8 QBR. 2021, he plays 16 games again. He goes for another 4,000 yards, 4,221 yards, 33 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. I had to look at my notes and make sure I wrote that down correctly because back-to-back seasons, 4,000 yards, 30-plus touchdowns. But this time, he only throws 7 interceptions the entire year. He finishes with his third highest rating with a 103.1 rating, and he finishes with a 58.3 QBR as well. 2022, he plays 17 games. This is the year the Vikings won the NFC North. He finishes with over 4,500 yards passing, 4,547 yards, 29 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, a 92.5 rating, and a 52.3 QBR, which leads us down here to 2023. He only played 8 games this year. He ended up tearing his ACL and would miss the rest of the season. But in the span of those 8 games, he throws for 2,331 yards, 18 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, a 103.8 rating, and a 63.2 QBR. To say that Kirk Cousins has been consistent is just keeping it light. This man has literally been the crux. He's been one of the main motors, the anchor behind this offense. And along with guys like Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne and company, he's been able to elevate his game and elevate the team around him as well. And now there comes a point where he is going to be a free agent going into this offseason, and the questions are starting to spur around what's next for Kirk Cousins and what's next for the Minnesota Vikings. And not only what's next for the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, but what's going to happen with Justin Jefferson. Because there are rumors starting to swell via Tom Pelissero saying that dependent on what Kirk Cousins does, if he signs a deal with the Minnesota Vikings, that will determine if Justin Jefferson, the star wide receiver, is going to sign a long-term deal with the team. And in that light, you're looking at it in one of two ways. Either Minnesota is going to do everything they can to ensure that they keep Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson as a unit, because it sounds to me, and this is kind of going back to like the Minnesota Vikings, not the Minnesota Vikings, but like the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, when there were talks about like who was going to be the next head coach after the season. Max Crosby, star-studded defensive end for the Raiders, basically was putting it out there saying that if they didn't sign Antonio Pierce, he would be requesting a trade. And well, Antonio Pierce ended up signing on as the new head coach of the team, and they keep Max Crosby. Now, I'm not saying that Justin Jefferson is going to pull the same stunt. I'm not saying that he's going to basically tell the Minnesota Viking brass and the head coach and company that if you don't re-sign Kirk Cousins, then I want out, I want to trade. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's the type of person that no matter who you bring into the fold, he's going to get his production. He's going to produce. He's going to get those 800, 900 yards. He's probably going to get 1,000 yards. He's going to get about like 8 to 10 touchdowns. He's going to get his receptions. He's going to get his. He's going to produce. But it goes in line with what Kirk Cousins and what does he want to do, and what does the Minnesota Vikings brass want to do with him? What do they see in him? Now, keep in mind, 2022, they won the NFC North. We all remember the whole star-studded thing where like they were playing, I would say in London, they were playing several away games, and after the game, whenever they won, you would see him with the chain around his neck, the sunglasses, the iced out rollies that his teammates were giving him. He was doing the little dance on the plane and whatnot, and that was a fun vibe. Everybody loves that fun vibe, and that was one of his, that, like I said, consistent 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a 92.5 rating with a 52.3 QBR. 4,500 yards passing. Like, that was a very solid, very good, productive year for Kirk Cousins. And my only guess is, like, if he doesn't tear his ACL, if he doesn't miss the rest of the season, I'm believing that this man right here has another 4,500 yards throwing and possibly another 30 touchdown to maybe 10 interception year, and possibly leads this Minnesota Vikings team to a playoff spot, or maybe even contending for the NFC North if, they hadn't got off that sluggish start. But with everything being said, the question now remains, what happens with Kirk Cousins? What happens, going forward? Do the Minnesota Vikings shell out the money? And if so, how much are they looking at? Do they give him 2 years? 3 years? Do they give him 75 mil per, 80 mil per? Do they guarantee money up front? Do they push the money back a little bit? That way it could help the team out? Or does Kirk Cousins end up signing elsewhere? Because, word is kind of going around saying that maybe depending on how the chips fall, Kirk Cousins could want to go to Atlanta. He could want to go back to Washington, maybe New England. Because there are a lot of teams right now that are going to be in the hunt for a quarterback. Just like the whole Justin Fields situation, where the Chicago Bears have the number 1 pick and they have the option to maybe trade him off or keep him. The same thing could be said with the Minnesota Vikings. They could either sign Kirk Cousins to a 2 to 3 year deal, or they could let him test free agency, and who knows, maybe the highest bidder wins and he ends up going elsewhere. And to me, I've watched football long enough. It's very weird to see somebody you're so familiar with and someone who's had so much success in one spot go to another team and put on a different jersey and just play a new type of game. It's weird to see that. It's like watching Aaron Rodgers go to the Jets, and instead of wearing that number 12 that he's synonymous for, he's wearing number 8. Now, granted, he didn't play a full season with the Jets. We all know what happened with him, but still, it was weird. It was different to see Aaron Rodgers in New York Jets green instead of the Green Bay Packers type of green. So it might be a little bit challenging to see Kirk Cousins in a different jersey and a different team and whatnot. But what I will say is this: you get Kirk Cousins healthy, you have one of the most consistent quarterbacks coming to your team. I mean, again, we can go down the list. 2018, 16 games. 2019, 15 games. 2020, 16 games. 2021, 16 games. 2022, 17 games. He's averaging about 4,000, 4,100, 4,200 yards per game that he's played. He's averaging about close to 27 and a half, 28 touchdowns that he's thrown each year. He's thrown less than 12 interceptions, give or take, per year that he's played. So this right here is a guy that you don't want to lose sight of. You don't want to give up too easily and whatnot. You want to try and hold on to him as much as possible. And if the rumors from Tom Pelissero are true and Justin Jefferson is saying that it's dependent on what Kirk Cousins does, that he might sign a long-term deal, you might want to try and keep Kirk Cousins on your team for as long as possible. I don't think he wants to leave Minnesota. I think he would like to stay in Minnesota. I would expect him to stay with Minnesota. But if he was to leave Atlanta and possibly maybe the Patriots, maybe the Commanders, one of those three teams, or maybe another team on the outside. Who knows? Maybe the Steelers, because I know they're going to be looking for a veteran quarterback. Maybe someone like them could look down the line and try to persuade Kirk Cousins to come their way. But ultimately, if it's up to me and what I'm saying, Kirk Cousins is possibly staying in Minnesota. I don't see him leaving. I don't see Justin Jefferson not signing a long-term deal. I think those two are going to be a tandem for a little bit longer. And if everything plays out well, he's healthy enough, and that team gets whatever little nicks, whatever little bumps, whatever little things they can work on, they get those fixed up. I think we're looking at the Vikings contending for another NFC North title, and making it very interesting for the next few seasons, depending on how long Kirk Cousins stays in Minnesota. But with all that being said, with everything that I've laid out, man, with everything I've said, I really do believe that we're going to see Kirk Cousins wearing that Minnesota Vikings purple, leading the Skull Chance, and possibly leading the Vikings to another NFC North title, and hopefully a better, more successful playoff run, instead of just getting one and done at home by a upstart New York Giants quarterback, because that right there was just odd to witness. I would love to see him go a little bit further down the line, but hey, that's just me. With all that being said, I've laid it out to you guys. Kirk Cousins, does he stay in Minnesota or does he leave? I say he's staying, but who knows? We will all find out when free agency officially starts in March. Y'all keep it locked in. Y'all keep in tune. Any breaking news, anything that pops up, I'm definitely going to be talking about it. So stay locked in. Stay tuned. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the comment section below as well. Let me know what y'all think about this. And I will catch y'all later on. It's your boy, Izzy Phantasmo with Westside Sports. Stay locked in. I'll see y'all soon. Peace.
Again, they wanna call it demonic events, but it really don't matter. We still let them in.